Dallas and Winnipeg continue to lose, but thanks to Tampa Bay, the Minnesota Wild are probably not in a position to buy anymore. Thanks a lot, you jerks. We'll talk about the Tanner Jeannot trade and what it means for the Wild at the deadline today on Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked on Sports Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Just a reminder, you can find Locked on Wild on all of your favorite podcast platforms, absolutely free of charge. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us as we recap an eventful week for the Minnesota Wild, look ahead to a busy week before the trade deadline, and the fact that the Tampa Bay Lightning broke the trade deadline before the Wild had a chance to do anything. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, and joined, as mentioned, by Alex Micheletti here on a Victory Micheletti Monday after the Wild took down the Columbus Blue Jackets. Kirill Kaprizov, I should say, took down the Columbus Blue Jackets in overtime yesterday. And so, Alex, we talked about it. We have talked about it in the lead up to this final few days before the trade deadline starts. And the Wild are in a good position. They're now second in the Central Division because Winnipeg just continues to lose. The Dallas Stars have the most statistically odd record in the year 2023 so far, as they're 8-7-6. So the Central Division is right there for the taking. And despite all the struggles that the Wild have had this year offensively, they're right in the mix.
It's unbelievable, right? What a difference a week can make, or couple weeks. It's a roller coaster. I don't know how this division's going to end up. We have teams dropping off and just waving the white flag, making crazy trades. We have teams that have guys that they're just holding out for trade related reasons, but are they actually going to trade them? Who knows? The market is just, it's chaos right now. And so this week is going to be even crazier. I can't wait for Friday.
Yeah, it's going to be just an absolute mess this week because, as you alluded to, there are trades that were apparently like at the 5-yard line that no longer are happening. It's just absolute chaos. And despite all of that, you look at what the Wilds were able to do this past week. They beat Columbus twice. One game took overtime, but it's a Columbus team that did take the Edmonton Oilers to the brink. Well, I should preface that they took Jack Campbell to the brink.
Yes.
But then after he was pulled, it was pretty much smooth sailing for the Oilers. A really good game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I was actually really impressed with how the Wild played in that one. Just came down to a turnover and William Nylander in overtime that led to the loss there. But you have this team that just continues to find ways to win despite still really only having the one line that is scoring consistently, and just a bunch of guys kind of down the rest of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Kirill's on a Kirby Puckett-like run right now. It's insane. I really hope, I predicted that he would get 50 goals, 50 plus. I hope, he can still get there. The way he's scoring, I mean, he should. It's just an incredible run he's on. But that if they make the playoffs, that we've seen it. You can't rely on him to be the only scorer. That's where they ran into issues with Kevin Fiala being on the milk carton and not doing anything in the playoffs and taking mind-numbing penalties and just getting frustrated. And so they're going to need a second line to help them. So, someone's got to help Joel Eriksson Ek. Matt Boldy hasn't scored in a while, so they're going to have to get him going again. Try to follow Brandon Duhaime lead there. It's somebody. Jordan Greenway's not doing anything. Foligno's not doing anything. It's tough. The fourth line doesn't get a whole lot of minutes. So, but it's someone's got to help.
Somebody has to do something. And I was on today with the guys at the Soda Pod today also, and I believe that that episode will have dropped either shortly after or right around the time that everybody's listening to this. And I liken it to what we're seeing with the second line. I liken it to the top line center position that we saw with Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello, where you don't necessarily need this like world beater performance in that spot. And that spot specifically is the other wing on line 2. I'm comfortable enough with what we've seen from Joel Eriksson Ek as a guy that gets to the net and Matt Boldy to say that I think those two work well together.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need, like, the Wild have been able to get good performances from that line with Adam Beckman, with Sammy Walker, with Brandon Duhaime, all on those lines. And so you don't need like a top 5 player in the NHL at that spot. You just need somebody that, in the case of Walker and Beckman, can help drive the offense, or in the case of Brandon Duhaime, just works their tail off at getting to the puck and getting there first and generating chances that way. And I love Marcus Foligno as a player, as a teammate, but he does not do that. And he has not done that this year. And so him being the guy on that line with Boldy and Eriksson Ek just does not seem like a fit for me.
No, it's it throws everything off. You feel bad for a guy like Eriksson Ek too, because he's having the best year of his career, I think. Mm-hmm. And a lot of his offenses has had to come from the power play. It's got to be frustrating for him too. Because I'm sure he would love to play with Kirill and Zuccarello 5-on-5. But they can't do that right now with this team. And now Ryan Hartman started to play a lot better too, which is great to see. This team is so weird because their wings can generate offense really without a really good center play.
Right.
You see the top teams in the league, Boston, Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, Toronto. They have Ryan O'Reilly, Austin Matthews. All these teams that their centers are the ones that get the offense going. With the Wild, it's the wings. It's just it's a different way to stir the drink, you could say, and but come playoff time, you need really good center play. So and that's why the Wild have struggled come postseason. But maybe this year's different.
Well, and we'll see. And final note before, and we'll talk about the trade deadline ripples. Still annoyed with that, and we'll talk more about that
no doubt
in a bit. But you look at the Western Conference right now, and let's look at the Wild are in the second spot in the Central Division right now. The Wild Cards right now are Winnipeg in the number 1, Seattle in the number 2 spot, and Winnipeg has 71 points. Seattle has 70. Calgary has 66. And after that, that's the list, because Nashville they got rid of Nino Niederreiter and Tanner Jeannot, who but they've signified that they're done. St. Louis is done. Vancouver's too far back, and then you have Arizona, San Jose, Chicago, and Anaheim, who are not even close. So you have one team outside the postseason picture right now that is fighting for a spot. Everybody else is already in or has already tapped out.
Yeah, it's it's crazy, isn't it? That Kraken team, I just don't think the goaltending is going to hold up for them unless they try to make a move, because Martin Jones has been horrendous lately, and Grubauer's been awful too. He gave up another, Toronto's a wagon, but it's apparently the Wild is the only team that can really slow down that offense. But they gave up another 5 spot. Yeah, I don't see Seattle they're holding on for dear life. Calgary's holding on for dear life because their goaltending. Markstrom, he's like that tweet I saw last night. He's colder than ice cold, Markstrom. It's
let me find that quick, because that is a great pull by you. Just did a little digging late in the night last night because it's a weekend. Nobody goes to bed at a requisite time. The Markstrom numbers are just awful so far this season. It's something like already here in 2023, he has given up. Here it is. Jacob Markstrom has already allowed 3+ goals. 3+ goals in 8 starts in 2023 alone. Philip Gustafson's done it 8 times all season.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know what happened with his change from Vancouver to Calgary, but it just that contract's been a nightmare. And he's kind of holding them back. There's also some guys that maybe haven't really adapted to Sutter's system there. Jonathan Huberdeau's agent, Alan Walsh, just attacking that organization. Never a good thing when your agent's publicly airing out what you're probably saying behind the scenes. And yeah, it's been a nightmare. I don't think the Kadri move by them, it hasn't worked out totally. And so they're going to come right down to the wire there with Seattle, I'm sure. We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, but I have, in the span of 24 hours, in the span of 12 hours, changed my tune entirely on how the trade deadline should go. And so when we come back, we will talk about that, because, as I said in the open, Tampa Bay really threw a monkey wrench into the rest of the trade deadline. And so we have to air some grievances there as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Our next partner has a product I use every single day of the week. And let's take a look at it right from here. I started taking AG1 because it helps you simplify your vitamin and supplement routine. All you need is one delicious scoop of AG1, and you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Plus, AG1 is lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. The NHL trade deadline is Friday, March 3rd. You can join us for a live Locked On NHL YouTube show from 2 to 4 p.m. as the Locked On NHL hosts break down the biggest deals from across the league. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The trade deadline. Let's talk about it because, I've changed my tune completely. Alex, I know we've been pretty staunchly on the team buy up until what happened yesterday. Tanner Jeannot traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning in a deal that included a first-round pick, a second-round pick, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and a fifth-round pick, and Cal Foote just to add to it. Is this one of the most egregious overpays in trade deadline history? And I say that fully understanding that the Wild have maybe one of the top 10 they're on their own right in Martin Hanzal. I should probably censor that. But is this Tanner Jeannot deal the new just gross overbuy that a team has made in recent memory?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. They made this trade, after they gave up 7 goals, yesterday. I mean, just hideous. Brian Elliott gave up, I think 6 in one period. Just hideous. I think they needed more help on the back end than anything. This is a guy that has scored 5 goals this season, and just think this return, it might be more than the Patrick Kane return, which is just it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Now maybe maybe it goes up now after they see this trade.
I would hope.
I would hope. But yeah, we're going to look back at it, I think, in my opinion. I think you have the similar thoughts as me. I mean, as one that just, really is going to hurt them for the future too. They don't have many draft picks. They keep trading away their first round draft picks, and you need those to be successful in the NHL. They've won a couple cups, but they kind of remind me they might turn into the San Jose Sharks of the future here. Look at the Sharks. I mean, they have guys, going into the 30s now, that are kind of on the decline there. And now they don't know what to do. They don't have a ton of prospects. So, San Jose is kind of just going to be in the tank for a long time here. So I don't know what Tampa's going to do to get out of it, because they don't have a whole. If you look at their AHL team too, it's not great. So
no.
Yeah.
And I'll put it this way, is because I had somebody respond to one of my tweets poking fun at the trade, and I know there are comparisons being made because Tampa Bay does this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
In that they go get a guy who is not doing well in their current spot, and they turn him into just the prototypical Tampa Bay Lightning rise to the highest occasion. It's just, this is like going to McDonald's and paying $51 for a plain cheeseburger. Jeannot is a guy that he hits. He's physical. That's it. This would be the same. This would be the same as the Wild giving up if they would redo the Ryan Reeves trade. It would be like giving up 3 picks to get Ryan Reeves.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I mean, but 5 picks for one guy, and he's not in your top 6. That's what's gonna just affect the rest of the trade market here, because this is a guy that doesn't score. I mean, he had 5 goals this season. I know Nashville's not doing great, but he wasn't in a top 6 in Nashville either. So that much for a guy that, I mean, I can't wait to hear the press conference on this, just to see what their thoughts are. I mean, I don't think I don't think he's at the same level as a Nick Paul or Brandon Hagel, who they
Oh,
picked up previously. Those guys can at least score. This guy doesn't score.
well,
So.
and Winnipeg just gave up a 2024 second round pick for Nino Niederreiter, who does score.
Right.
And is a top 6 guy.
Great business by Winnipeg. Yeah.
That trade makes sense.
Right.
This one does not. And the ripple effect that it causes is every team with a player now that is on the block. Vancouver, for one. Brock Boeser. They're saying Tampa Bay gave up that for Jeannot. We need to hold out for 2 first-round picks for Boeser.
Yeah, 100%. Now JT Miller's back in the mix too, because they saw that return and they're like, we need to. Can we please get off this horrendous contract? But teams are still intrigued by JT Miller because he can score. James Van Riemsdyk, who's having just a horrendous year, but teams are poking around on him just because of the history. But his price is going to go up. I mean, I don't want to pay a first round draft pick for him, but it seems like after they saw the Jeannot, they're going to want that and more because they know he's one of the few remaining options. And so it's going to be interesting to see if Chuck Fletcher can get a team to bite on JVR.
Yeah, I'm out on Van Riemsdyk. He's just not producing at a level because so I look at it this way with Van Riemsdyk. You bring him in and he is essentially in a similar position to a handful of the guys that the Wild currently have, as a player that can score but is not scoring at his usual levels. And so does a trade reignite his scoring touch? Or do you just end up putting more pressure on a guy because, okay, he's the one you brought in. He's the one that's supposed to save the season.
Yeah, another problem with him, too, he's not the fleetest of foot now at this stage. And that, do you want to slow down a Wild team that is already struggling to score 5-on-5? I don't know. The only reason why you would bring him in is to help on power play, but the power play has actually been one of the the good things with this wild team right now.
Right.
So it doesn't make much sense, but if they become desperate and that's the only guy, who knows. But now things have completely changed with the trade market,
which is why I wonder if Bill Guerin goes the good old-fashioned hockey trade route. He seems to like to do it where you give up something on the roster because let's face it, there are a couple of guys that probably could benefit from a change of scenery. We've talked about that extensively throughout the season. And with the prices going up, like if you want somebody that's physical, that doesn't score a ton,
do we have a guy for you?
We've got a few of those for you. And so maybe he finds somebody that can score and is maybe on a maybe you find a way to do something where you take Jordan Greenway and you flip him to another team and you get a player that maybe isn't making the same amount as Brock Boeser is, but basically finds a trade to where up picks, you're not giving up prospects. You're doing the good old-fashioned hockey trade to hope that a change of scenery will benefit both players. Maybe that's the route they go.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, Bill Guerin's comments yesterday too about Matt Dumba saying, Matt's been playing his best hockey of late, and it's tough to get rid of a guy that's such an important part of the room, but I can't guarantee that he'll be on the team the rest of the season. So it kind of seems like that he's still trying to figure out what he's going to do with Matt Dumba. It's not 100% shut. So, we'll see, if a team comes calling, because, teams are always looking for defense.
Yep.
And we've seen some high scoring games lately in the NHL. Just goalies giving up 5-6 goals, like it's insane. This weekend that was some of the best. Like if you like offense, we had a ton of that this weekend in the NHL. So
yeah, we did.
Yeah,
I'm kind of wondering if Bill Guerin didn't anticipate the Tanner Jeannot trade, because his comments lead you to believe that he was like, well, we're not really getting offers that we would like on a bunch of guys, but that could always change. And then all of a sudden this trade happens, and I'm sure everybody's back on the menu.
I couldn't imagine all the rest of the GMs in the league seeing what Nashville pulled off here. It completely changed. I'm sure a lot of war rooms, and it'll be interesting that the Wild are kind of taking the war room on the road too.
Yes.
So it's not going to be at the X. So it's it's going to be fascinating to see, exactly. You mentioned him earlier, Brock Boeser, and see what Vancouver can do with them. And, they desperately want him to be home. But, I also don't think Vancouver wants to pay a ton of his contract,
No.
or retain it to wherever he ends up. So, yeah, their organization is in a chaos, right now.
Well, and we'll see them on Thursday. As you mentioned, the Wild will be taking the War Room on the road, and so we'll take a look at what the Wild have in store this week, including a home against the only other team outside the playoff picture that is still fighting for a spot. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want to deal with all the fat and calories? Well, you've got to try Built Bar then. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That is not a typo. 100% real chocolate. Plus, they come in some unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. If that's not enough of a sell, Built Bars are incredibly healthy too. They contain only 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. All this time, if you've ordered Built Bars, you know the agonizing waiting for them to show up at your doorstep after ordering them at Built.com. Well, now there's a quicker option. You can head to your nearest Walmart or Sam's Club to grab yourself a box of Built Bars today so that you can start your snacking the moment you leave the store. If you don't have a Walmart or Sam's Club handy, you can always head to Built.com and order yourself as many boxes as you'd like. Either way, make sure you head to Built.com today to get your snacking started the right way with Built Bar. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Listeners, we'll have a trade deadline primer for you midweek as we gear up for the trade deadline. And then, of course, we'll have a trade deadline recap show for you on Friday, in addition to the Locked On NHL programming as well. So we get a ton of trade deadline stuff for you coming up here this week. Seth Topol joined by Alex Micheletti. And Alex, busy week for the Wild, but then again, they all are. Seems like every week is just stacked with games, and it's no exception for the Wild this week as they go Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. The New York Islanders come to town, a team that is in the thick of the Eastern Conference playoff chase, which is just looking more and more stacked on a daily basis. Timo Meier headed east. Every player of substance that's been traded so far is basically headed to the Eastern Conference. And so even though it's the Islanders, team that doesn't really score with that much success, it's still going to be a tough fight on Tuesday.
Yeah, they're a pain to play against, and Bo Horvat has just been phenomenal for them. He had a big shorthanded goal yesterday against the Jets to get the scoring going, and they shut out a high-scoring Jets team. And Sorokin didn't even play. It was Varlamov. It kind of seemed like Winnipeg punted that game by playing Rittich. I don't know why that decision was made. You ride Hellebuck right now. I mean, he's Vezina level. Yeah, you can't just afford to just give up games. So that was a very, very interesting decision. Rittich was terrible with Nashville, and then I don't know why Winnipeg thought he'd be a great backup option this season. It's clearly not worked. But yeah, I mean, this Islanders team is so hard to play against. They just can pack it in defensively. They have a really good D-core that likes to block a ton of shots. And they play their system so well. And Anders Lee has been phenomenal for them. Brock Nelson, so you got the Minnesota contingency with the Islanders that loves to play against their hometown team. And so it's gonna be an absolute battle. The last game was too. The Islanders had a lead against the Wild and choked it up late. So hopefully the Wild can get the first goal against them and set the tone against the Islanders.
Yeah, we'll talk about the goalie splits because I have a particular way I'd like to see this week play out, but we'll go through the games first. Then after Tuesday, the Wild head on the road against Vancouver on Thursday. Vancouver out of it. The Rick Tocchet era is in full swing after Bruce Boudreau was hung out to dry for a week and then fired. Still going to be bitter about that. But, the Canucks trying to get themselves back on track. But even with a new coach, it's still a team that is largely devoid of talent. They've got some higher-end players at the top of the roster, but beyond that, not great.
Yeah, their D-core is horrendous, and without Demko, they they don't have much goaltending either. Delia or this Martin kid, it's not good. And Elias Pettersson's having just an insane year on a really bad team, but like you said, not a ton of depth. The Wild smoked them the last time they played, and so I'm expecting the same thing. It's another game where you need the 2 points. Don't give Vancouver any life. Get that early lead, and then hope that they just kind of self-destruct like Columbus did yesterday.
Vancouver on the season, and I know this doesn't mean much because Elvis Merzlikins, his numbers were coming into yesterday's game abysmal. The Canucks as a team have a 3.95 goals against average and an 878 save percentage. As a team.
Brutal. That's why they are where they are. You look at their D-core, other than Hughes, I mean, Tyler Myers has been awful. Oliver Ekman-Larsson's been awful. It just, the list goes on and on. They just don't have the talent back there, and they're going to trade Luke Schenn here in a couple days. I'm sure he's going to be one of the top targets. And now that what we saw, what Nashville got, they're going to want the house for Luke Schenn. So, it's going to be interesting to see what Vancouver does and see if they trade JT Miller as well and Brock Boeser.
It'd probably be the right approach to take with prices at an all-time high, but I guess we'll see if that ends up being the case. But then after that, you've got the home and home tilt, the tilt against the Calgary Flames at Calgary on Saturday, and then I believe it's either Monday or Tuesday of next week. I want to say it's Tuesday that they play the second game. But yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like, hey, play the same team 2 games in a row, but just have like 4 days off in between.
Yeah, again, we always talk about this. The this schedule has just been crazy. I mean,
Bonkers.
the Wild had another team yesterday on the back end of a back-to-back. I don't know how it keeps happening, but now you got this weird schedule quirk too, where there's a couple off days in between with the home and home there. Yeah, it makes it just makes no sense. Well, the good thing is at least if you want to ride the same goalie twice, you can do that and not have to worry about the back-to-back switching. So depending on how the first one goes, but yeah, Calgary, such a weird team to figure out and what direction they're headed. And, they have one of the oldest coaches in the league and he's very old school, and they have some young talent that's starting to come in too. And I just don't know if it's totally meshing yet. And you make a big trade in the off season, and your star that you signed to a massive extension too, and Jonathan Huberdeau, he barely is over the double digit mark here, which and you knew Kadri, the scoring was probably going to go down a little bit just being off that Colorado team, but it's nowhere near where they thought it would be either. But that's kind of what you take that risk for 32 plus year old player. They're kind of starting to go in the decline, just the way the NHL is now. It's crazy to think that that 32 is kind of like a fossil these days, but
yeah, because I myself am older than 32,
right, and that's where I'm about to be here in a couple of weeks. But yeah, it's just crazy to think that with athletes. But the game continues to get younger and faster. And I don't know, it's Calgary just is not getting the goaltending they need. Jacob Markstrom is kind of turning into Mike Smith, which is we'll never forget Mike Smith is legendary playoff performances. Last spring was top of the list.
I felt so bad, and it's bad when a clearing attempt finds a way to just slip past you, and at that point you're just like
you just look at McDavid and Draisaitl, it's like, oh man,
it's like, I am so
sorry.
sad. But it's funny too, there are two teams in three that have benefited from the overtime point the most. Dallas with 12 overtime losses, Calgary and San Jose. Well, just weird that they're in that mix too.
Yes.
But those three teams have 12 points that they have achieved by simply getting the game to overtime. And so if you look at it for Calgary, they are on the season 27-33.
And still in a chance at the playoffs. Yeah, that's
okay. Thick of the wild card chase. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Gary Bettman's NHL. That's what he wants.
Don't even get me started on that. I did a rant on the Dallas Stars the other day about that. It's great that a team that has they actually have the lowest amount of wins amongst playoff teams right now, the Dallas Stars at 31. And so cool that a 31-28 team is leading the division.
It's mind-boggling.
I don't understand.
That's not sustainable either.
No. And so again, to come full circle and finish things up today, I would love to give another round of applause to the Tampa Bay Lightning for gross overpaying, throwing the trade market completely out of whack. Thank you for doing your part to facilitate this madness. I don't know. Maybe Bill Guerin finds a way to take advantage of this.
Yeah, if he does, round of applause. And the Billy Goats will be happy, and it'll be interesting.
With that, I think that's where we're gonna leave it here for today. So we'll see how things play out. Make sure to keep an eye out for the trade deadline primer, although Actually, it's probably a good thing that we haven't done it yet, because now you just are going to have like part 2 of the trade deadline after the Jeannot trade. So look for that midweek as we gear up for the trade deadline on Friday. We'll have you covered here on Locked On Wild. So make sure you stay close as we keep you up to date throughout the course of the season. Subscribe on YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms, social media. We've got you covered. Plus, we have a huge reveal coming later today that is March Madness themed. So keep an eye out for that as well. All part of the content we bring you here at Locked On Wild. So make sure you follow along. We are bringing you new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Sports Podcast Network.